This young boy was walking along the street when suddenly, he encountered a large dog. He became frightened and in an attempt to ward off the dog, he shouted with all his might, "Get out, you silly dog!" However, no one could have predicted what the dog would do next. Sasha, aged 5 years, was not typically fearful of dogs. Indeed, he had a genuine fondness for them from his first encounter with a furry friend. This fondness manifested itself when he was just 2 years old, and he began running around the house, pretending to be the dog himself. However, a couple of years later, an event occurred that caused him to view dogs in a different light. His fascination with dogs eventually led to him owning his own canine companion. It was not, as one might assume, a puppy, but rather a large animal. Sasha was still a young boy when his grandmother gifted him with a Newfoundland dog. She could no longer care for the dog herself. Sasha's parents were delighted to receive the gift. Such a beautiful dog, but the owners were unsure if the dog would adapt well. However, as soon as the dog entered the house, it was as if it had always belonged there. The dog was friendly and gentle, and soon became Sasha's closest friend. They would spend hours playing together around the house. The owner named the dog Laura, and she was patient with Sasha, always waiting for him to have time and following him wherever he went. Over time, Sasha and Laura grew closer. In the afternoons, they would take naps together, and Sasha even asked his mother to allow him to take his best friend with him to kindergarten. Unfortunately, this was not possible, but due to this, Sasha would always keep a close eye on the clock, counting down the hours until he could return home. Laura was always there for Sasha, and he loved her more than anything. However, when Sasha turned 4 years old, something happened that changed everything. An unexpected event occurred. Laura, the dog, went missing. This happened while Sasha and his parents were taking the dog for a walk. They were in a vast area with large fields, dense forests, and even a large lake. The group had been walking for more than an hour when the incident occurred. A loud noise from a car, which had burst into flames, startled Laura significantly. As a result, she pulled so hard on the leash that Sasha's mother could not hold her. Before they could determine what had happened, Laura had disappeared into the dense forest. It was distressing to see Sasha's reaction. His mother noted that he was distraught. Sasha remained outside for hours, calling for the dog and hoping it would return. Sasha could not understand how his beloved pet could simply disappear like this. After a couple of weeks, the situation had turned into a month-long period, and Sasha's optimism began to fade. His parents attempted to console him, but nothing made him happy. Sasha began blaming himself for Laura's absence. He felt he should have done something to prevent it. More to protect her, Sasha did not give up on finding his dog Laura. Every day after school, he looked for her and posted advertisements around the city, even going without sleep at night in the hope of hearing her bark outside his window. However, nothing worked. One day, everything changed when Sasha heard a faint but familiar barking sound while walking home from school. He stopped to listen intently, and the barking grew louder. Realizing it was coming from an alley nearby, Sasha without hesitation ran towards the source of the sound. As he approached, he saw a dark silhouette. It was Laura. Sasha could not believe his eyes. He rushed to her, hugging her tightly, and she licked his face, walking back to the house with him. Sasha's parents were thrilled to have their beloved pet back after almost 3 months of absence. They could not believe their eyes as Sasha entered the house with Laura in tow. Something has changed in Laura. She appears to be thinner than before. Sasha's parents have noticed that she gained some weight prior to her disappearance, but she has never been this thin prior to this. Laura has been seen looking out the window frequently. She continues to play with Sasha, and she eats her meals and walks again, as before. However, for some reason, she appears to be looking worried all the time. Additionally, they have noticed that Laura has been sneaking out of the house on several occasions each day. There is a back door that a dog can open, allowing Laura to enter the yard on her own. Despite this, Laura still runs away several times each day. At first, Sasha felt terrified at the thought of her leaving the family for months, but after a few hours, she always returns. Sasha's parents eventually concluded that Laura must be hiding somewhere in the bushes near the edge of their property. They have a large yard with plenty of space, but they did not realize that Laura had discovered a way to escape. The backyard and the forest were Laura's secret sanctuary, which she had considered her home for nearly 3 months. However, as she kept returning, no one paid attention to her. These secret visits continued for almost a year, until tragedy befell the family. Laura was an elderly dog when they adopted her, and her time had come. She passed away at the age of 11, leaving behind a sad memory for Sasha's family. Sasha, who had been through a difficult time, was devastated by the loss of his beloved companion. His parents attempted to console him, but knew that nothing could replace his bond with Laura. Sasha spent much of his time in the yard, sitting in Laura's former spot. He continued to do so for several days, but eventually he stopped. Then, Sasha told his parents, "Mom, Dad, I no longer want a dog. They love you at first, but then they leave and abandon you. Even when they return, they continue to do the same thing, which was heartbreaking for me to witness a young child saying such things. All that could be done was to offer comfort." Sasha remained saddened for a while, but eventually, he started acting more like a typical young boy again. He played with his toys and chased after a ball in the garden. It was reassuring to see that, even though the blow to his son was significant, it could be healed with time. However, something happened while he was playing near the house. There were no other people around, and Sasha believed he was alone. However, he did not realize that two large watery eyes were watching him. As he kicked the ball down the road, it bounced against a nearby fence, and as he followed it, he heard a soft moan. When he turned around, he came face to face with the largest dog he had ever seen, even larger than his own dog Laura. However, she looked exactly the same as her. However, it could not be his Laura. So, who was this dog? Sasha felt so scared that he froze, but he knew that he had to do something. He squared his shoulders and shouted at the dog with energy. All the anger that Laura had left in him poured out at once, and Sasha screamed, "Get out, you silly dog!" Sasha shouted with the hope that the dog would run away. However, the dog did not run. To his surprise, it did not move toward him. Instead, it stepped back and sat down, as if it was waiting for Sasha to make the first move. Sasha slowly backed away, not wanting to turn his back. He was about to retreat to the safety of his home when he noticed something strange about the dog. The dog rolled on its back and offered Sasha a pat. It was as if the dog already knew Sasha, even though they had not met before. Sasha gathered all the courage he could and slowly approached the animal. "Hello," he said. "Dear friend, are you lost?" The dog tilted its head in response. Sasha stepped forward and to his surprise, the dog approached him. She licked his face, and that's when he noticed something that caused his heart to skip a beat. The dog's eyes were similar in shape and color to Laura's, and Sasha felt a sudden surge of hope that it might be her. He could not believe his eyes but knew it was impossible, so he rubbed them and opened them again. The dog was still there, and Sasha slowly approached her. She sat there, watching him with her large round eyes. Sasha reached out and gently stroked the dog's head, and she closed her eyes and leaned into his hand. At that moment, Sasha was convinced that it was indeed Laura. She had returned to him. He was overjoyed and hugged her, crying with happiness. It felt like he had been reunited with a long-lost family member, and the dog licked his face and wagged her tail in response. Sasha knew that this was the most joyous moment of his life. Of course, it was not Laura, and he would soon find out, but he was not far from the truth. His parents could not believe their eyes when they saw him with a dog that resembled Laura. They had never seen anything like this before. Sasha was overjoyed, and his parents were delighted to see their son so happy, but they were also perplexed. Who was this dog? Where had she come from, and why did she seem so familiar to their son already? The dog remained in the house for the entire week, and Sasha's parents agreed with his story that Laura had returned to life and become part of the family once again. However, they knew this was not the case. They posted notices around the neighborhood, hoping that someone would identify the dog. This would have dashed Sasha's hopes once again, but it was the correct thing to do. However, no one came forward to claim the dog, and they remained puzzled as to why. This incident occurred, and eventually, it turned out that the dog in question did not belong to any specific owner. After 7 days, the reason for this became clear. They brought the dog to a veterinarian for examination, and during this appointment, things began to become increasingly perplexing. The veterinarian even took a blood sample from the dog and examined it under a microscope, leaving the veterinarian seemingly more puzzled than Sasha and his parents themselves. "What is going on here, doctor? Can you tell us what you see?" they asked. The veterinarian regarded them with an unusual expression. "I'm not sure how to explain this, but on the surface, this dog appears almost identical to Laura's. We will need to conduct further tests within the next few days," the veterinarian replied. The family returned home with a mysterious dog, Sasha sitting in the back seat. Sasha finally pieced together all the facts and realized that this could not be Laura. Sasha's parents worried about how they would handle the situation again. It was a sad event, but without negative emotions, as Sasha was happy to have made a new friend. And they hugged Newfoundland on the back seat of the car. However, Sasha also wondered where this dog had come from and why the vet had confused it with his old dog Laura. The next day, they took the dog for a walk in the woods behind their house, a place Sasha and his parents had not been to since they stopped searching for Laura. This place was filled with negative emotions for Sasha, but he wanted to visit it now. And he was not the only one, as for some reason, their new dog knew how to navigate the forest perfectly. She was pulling on the leash persistently, not to escape, but almost as if she wanted to show them something. After an hour-long walk, they reached a tree with a hollow under it. There they found a large nest made of twigs, leaves, and some hay. It was as if an animal had lived there and deliberately made a nest for itself. This could have been a place where an animal resided. Where did Laura stay for those 3 months? Sasha asked his parents. The parents were unsure of what to say, but it was a possibility. However, if that was the case, then how would the new dog have known where to find Laura? Then, the call came that explained everything. It was from the vet with the lab results. You will not believe it, but the DNA of this new dog is 50% identical to that of your old dog Laura. In some ways, this dog is not a complete stranger to you, as it is a direct descendant of your former dog. It turns out that the dog that licked his hand was actually 1 year old, the puppy of the late Laura. When Laura ran away, she was pregnant and gave birth to a puppy during the 3 months she was alone in the woods. This puppy grew up on its own in the forest, and now, this dog has come to Sasha's house, just as Laura once did. The boy and the dog have become inseparable, and Sasha has named her Laura Jr. They spend every moment together, and Laura Jr. seems to know that. Sasha was very special to his mother, just as she knew. She treated him with great care, patience, and was always willing to play with him. This is how it should be, Sasha's mother would say with a smile. Over time, Sasha and Laura Jr. grew up together. They explored the woods behind their home, played in the garden, and shared everything. Laura Jr. became a larger dog than Laura, but still as beautiful. The years passed and Sasha and Laura grew up together, but it seemed that Laura had no intention of leaving Sasha behind. She passed on a part of herself to him, and so he knew the way to Sasha's house. This is why she seemed to know who Sasha was, as if she had known him before. We never believed in reincarnation, but now I do, said Sasha's parents. Sasha and Laura had an unbreakable bond, similar to the bond between family members. Sasha had sexual relations with Laura. Although they were aware that Laura Jr. was not the same dog as her mother, they also recognized that she was unique in her own right. Since she was still a young animal, they could look forward to loving her for many years to come. Sasha's fears of losing a friend and his feelings of anger completely vanished. He relearned that dogs can be among the most loving and loyal animals in the world, and that they can bring immense joy to people's lives. He realized that sometimes, even in situations where it seems that everything is impossible, there is always the possibility that something remarkable will occur,